Great. So we do have some agenda items that we could go through. And the first one is, did we get some questions answered? Is there any follow-up that you would like to see? I know some of you submitted questions that weren't asked today. So if there's any follow-up that you would like, please let us know. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you. John, sure.
Yeah, one of the things that has recently come up that is a little bit concerning for me, and obviously, it's waiting for all the ripples to kind of to sort themselves out, is that obviously NYSERDA has made a lot of partnerships with the various Cornell cooperative extensions throughout the states. Either working on the hubs or working on solar or working on this, that, or the other thing. And Cornell obviously is a USDA, grant university system that was created by a federal act, and reports to NEFA and USDA, takes a lot of direction from the federal level. And one of the things that's concerning is that there has recently been there's a list available from the current National Science Foundation grants of keywords that could potentially be in conflict with some of the executive orders that have been issued for federal agencies. And where I'm going with that, the recent example to where there's a conflict that kind of carves Cornell out of the stuff is when like New York State, made marijuana legal, but it's still federally a Schedule One drug. So Cornell Cooperative Extensions cannot participate because of federal policy with things related to marijuana production, marijuana development, businesses, all that other stuff. We can touch hemp because of the Farm Bill, but we can't touch marijuana. And so my concern is that, because Cornell University, created by the Land Grant Act and reporting to NEFA and USDA, could potentially, depending on the direction that the federal government takes and USDA takes, could be forced to walk away from these projects because the fact that the hub contracts and a lot of these contracts are dripping with language that is currently prohibited under an executive order.
Does anybody have any comments?
Just that we have the same concerns regarding one of our federal grants, but through the EPA, and the constraint there is that the requirement as part of the grant application was to reference language that is now no longer viable. So we're curious to see what's going to happen with that in the long term.
So one of the agenda items, and Dan Busey thankfully added this, is really finding out how really what John and Carla are saying, how has the new executive orders and the new administration affected you? And how can we be supportive or help with solutions?
I mean, I've already been thinking about this because, it's a language thing. And a lot of stuff in the world today is just, pulling off one label and sticking another label on it. I think of the wisdom of again, this is the case example, but the Republican Party, the Republican Party years ago when John Boehner was still in charge of the House wanted to pass, a reduction in the estate tax. But the estate tax only affects people who are transferring $10 million of wealth upon death or more. There's not a lot of American people, surprisingly, that have $10 million or more to transfer at death. So, unsurprisingly, when they found out about the estate tax and learned that the majority of themselves were not necessarily affected by that, they were totally fine with the government taking some more of that. But then some of the great work of Frank Luntz decided to, after doing a ton of polling, realize that the American people were totally opposed to a death tax. So all they simply did was relabel the estate tax as the death tax, and all of a sudden popular opinion swayed completely the other way. And I guess where I'm going with that is that a lot of the language that is now prohibited by the federal government under executive orders and stuff through those agencies could be relabeled. I mean, like, when we're talking about, maybe underemployment or, housing stock inefficiencies and stuff like that. We're not really talking about labels that are related to, the equity and the inclusion and the DEI and all the other stuff that the White House wants to scrub for the next 4 years. Um, so, I'm already thinking about, what's the best way to get a thesaurus out and take these contracts and make them comply with, verbiage requirements, not necessarily actions.
I guess I'm wondering if, I guess the challenge there I was thinking about waiting for instruction from our PMs on that. Because what we found is that we just can't go ahead and change the scope of work that's part of the official contract. But yes, we had been thinking along the same lines, just that we needed you know, something to allow us to be able to do that.
Well, this network is designed to help us all, move forward with clean energy, renewable energy, and also support each other, learn from each other, support each other. So if we, Hi Dazzles, nice seeing you. So if there's anything collaboratively, Melissa Everett says here, okay, this is a great conversation. She's saying we do have other agenda items and really they're just updates, but and I know she wants to talk about a really cool program. So before we do that, is there any other additional comments or assistance that you need, or any way you can see this network helping in these challenging times? Please, the floor is yours. If not, we can go to Melissa.
Oh, what I actually said was I'm happy to defer because I just think what's going on right now is a much more time-sensitive thing, and I have something that's ongoing.
Yeah, so if there's more to say, please speak, and we'll go to Melissa after that.
I'll just jump in and along the lines of the question that I was asking Doreen about how we can be helpful to NYSERDA, help advocate for itself to get the money going. It's relevant to talk about how, now is the time to be reaching out to members of Congress, to letting them know how important federal support is for the clean energy programs that binds us all together. My national, we're a state affiliate of a national organization. And they are reminding us every single week that if we're not out there reaching out to members of Congress, telling the story in specificity about how federal programs for clean energy projects are really benefiting the district, we're really missing out here, because the action over the next, again, 4 to 6 weeks, however long it takes for them to come together with a budget reconciliation. The question is what's going to be in and what's going to be out. And if we're not out there advocating for these energy programs and getting members of the New York State delegation to say, hey, listen, that should not be on the cutting table, we need to keep the money flowing, we might be finding ourselves with an arm tied behind our back. So that is something that, that we're concerned about, and it's something that we as a broader network could probably work toward. I don't know if groups have, specific plans or tactics and all that, but something to throw out there, because we're a powerful group when we're speaking in one voice, and so I'll leave it at that.
Josh, do you have a sample letter or a template of letters that you've been sending to members of Congress that you might be able to share with us, with the language, the specificity you're referencing?
Yeah, I can share some stuff, but I think at the end of the day, though, specificity that each group can provide about what's happening in your area, about projects that are being, that are currently being funded by, federal money for clean energy programs, or the benefits to municipalities or consumers. I mean, we've been cautioned not to do the traditional, oh, here's our action alert, spread it around, and been advised to say no. The script now is to go in with an authentic message and letting each member of Congress know specifically, this is how our district is benefiting, this is how our district is suffering, and to name names, call it numbers in the most granular kind of way. So I can provide that as guidance, but I can't provide those actual numbers because you all are the keepers of the stories in your particular area.
Well said. Thank you. Yes, I did see a letter recently drafted by the New York League of Conservation Voters, and it was so well done. So if you can share anything, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And Ken.
Yeah, I was just going to, and Joshua just basically covered most of it, but I just to add one other piece to this, which is if people have, I mean, what would be helpful with this network, recognizing that there are other groups around the state who are actually doing some of this work too. But if people could sort of share what they do see, like if you see a letter, if you see something, or if you've talked to a particular congressperson and you found that your message resonated with them, that would be helpful for others, I think, to know, especially, for example, if it's a Republican congressional person who responds in a positive way to something, it might be helpful for others in that same district to know that, to also sort of reinforce that message. And also, it'd be helpful to know that if we're not in that district, because then if we do have a congressional representative who is Republican, we might be able to use something similar in our district with our representative.
One thing I think to add on to everything you're all saying, which I think truthfully we could probably help and assist with over here at Renewable Energy Long Island, is setting up essentially in one email inbox listserv where anyone in this group wants to send information like that, like Joshua, if you have those emails, if you have those letters, for example, rather than trying to hunt down email addresses of everyone here, knowing that there's one email address that you could send out and provide that information to everyone here. And if you do not want to be included in on that, simply I'd say let Melissa or myself know that information. But I think following this, that might be something good that we can do to help support the dissemination of this information and the collective action from all of us. So just wanted to put that out there. Yeah. and exactly, getting out the information of the representatives so that we have that all right at our fingertips. It's perfect.
And to Ken's point, to put a finer point on it, there are really four Republicans districts that matter a lot. So if you are represented by or have access to on Long Island, Congressmember Lolota and Garbarino. Garbarino in particular is really into this stuff. He's a co-chair of Climate Caucus. He's really into this stuff. And I think if he's really strong on this, getting his other counterparts like Amalia Takas or Lawler. But those are the four. That's the specificity. Apologies for folks upstate. I can't say I have such high hopes for members Tenney or Langworthy. But if you have a relationship with them and you can be an alchemist and maybe convert them into from lead to green, that would be fantastic. But these are the four downstate ones that really play a pivot. And with the margins being so narrow, all you need are a handful of New Yorkers to say, hey, listen, clean energy projects are really important to our economy. It's really good stuff here. We're not gonna let those get cut out of existence.
Eleanor, thank you. Bye-bye. We held a congressional climate chat for all the Long Island candidates. And the Republicans, Lolota and Garbarino, both used the same terminology when it came to the IRA benefits to Long Island, is that they're working and they don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, which means they both use that terminology, which means they've probably had discussions about that. So that is, that's what they said before they were elected, before our new administration took hold, but they were supportive of those programming.
Yes, and the other language I like to remind them of is that they've said all their careers they are all the above when it comes to energy policy. Well, all the above includes clean energy, does not exclude clean energy. So they need to be reminded consistency matters.
Well, there's just some good takeaways. As far as the dissemination, does it work just emailing me and I can get it out? I know, Melissa, you gave us some great resources prior to this meeting. We've talked about creating a Google folder, and I have to apologize. There was that other form. Bye, Chris. Thank you for joining. What was is Leo still on this call? Leo Wegman, are you? I don't know if you can hear me. Anyway, there were some suggestions on ways we could share resources and information. And if emails work for you, great. If there's other suggestions, we're open to hearing them. So with that, Melissa, we have 5 minutes. Would you like to
you know
chat?
what?
Yeah.
I am a pro at doing really short presentations, but I would consider this a teaser for a longer presentation because I think
Okay,
there's
great.
something we're onto that could be useful for others. And I'm sorry, Chris Rear isn't still on the call, but an outgrowth of the old Cleaner Greener Communities program, a bunch of stakeholders in the long ago regional sustainability plan just forgot to stop meeting and got together to exchange information, and during the pandemic did some really kind of vision questy conversations about how do we get to the future, how do we never mind the policies and the numbers, what's the flow of work, how do we think together about accomplishing the goals of the climate law, because I come from a kind of organizational background, and when people work together best is when they have a common roadmap in their minds or common mental models. So long story short, a bunch of us, some initial support from Carla's predecessor at HVRC and some support from Cornell Cooperative Extension pre and during hubs and Empire Clean Cities, now part of a very informal network. We created a regional climate action roadmap and toolkit. And I could share my screen enough to just say, if you want to turn it on, but it's hvclimateroadmap.org. And it turned out to be kind of a project drawdown for the region. And, it has analysis about how we get to building decarbonization, power sector decarbonization, transportation, and so forth. And I'll just give you a couple of examples of take homes that have led to projects with that work. We noticed that there's all kinds of local land use planning for renewable energy siting, and then there's utility grid planning in a separate silo. And we were able to bring Central Hudson at the grid engineering level together with some communities, and especially New Paltz, where there is a real concentration of potential sites, about 30 megawatts worth on a lot of publicly owned buildings. And so there's a little think group with their distribution grid engineering level people on what they can do to accelerate substation improvements, use software to create more headroom for those renewables, or even allow developers to cost share interconnection fees. So it's been this very exploratory on many fronts initiative to say, how can we unstick the barriers and help kind of amplify each other's signal? And I am feeling like there is a there after a lot of experimentation. We have a summit coming up on March 28th where we'll be doing some sharing of what's gotten done since last year. And I'd be happy to share more, welcome you all there. I'm watching the clock, so I'll babble if I don't shut up, but that's what we got.
That's great. And maybe this is something we could showcase in our next meeting, talk a little bit more about this roadmap and how we could, benefit from that, the work already done.
Yeah, and I would just say, for in the polarized climate, it sort of seems like there's three things that could happen. The climate law could be, could prevail, but top down, and the polarization could continue. Or it could fall apart, which none of us wants to imagine. Or we really create a sense of meaning at the local and regional level. As some of you were saying with the all of the above legislators, I think it's a way to get juices flowing.
Rebecca Evans also mentions that there's some really good resources. NICOM, and excuse me, what is the acronym NICOM?
New York Conference Committee, something, Coalition of Mayors.
Oh, good. Excellent. Okay. So it's in the chat, by the way, but there's a letter that went out to the House Ways and Means Com with some great language. So we'll get our hands on that as well. And they adapted it locally for Tompkins County. But yeah, local, that is why we're here, right? All comes from the local constituents. So wonderful. Well, thank you. Is there anything else? It is 12:30. We like to keep a nice tight meeting. Thank you for your time. And we're really excited to work with you all. And we're here. If there's anything questions you'd like to ask, we could throw them out there. And we look forward to meeting you next. We did set up a meeting date for March that seemed to work. I'll reach out to you and we could see if that's a date we still want to keep or if we want to move it back a little bit. So thank you all.